Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're doing something absolutely wild. We are bridging the gap between cutting-edge quantum physics and ancient spiritual texts. And why are we doing this? To find some actual practical peace in our incredibly chaotic modern world. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the daily grind, just full of doubts, or struggling to find clarity in your actions, you are in the exact right place. We're going to look at how thousands of years of profound philosophy actually align perfectly with modern science, giving us a literal blueprint for the art of living peacefully. Let's jump right in.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting the quantum nature of reality, probability waves, and Formless Brahman, Chapter 16, the inner war, mastering the mind's chariot, and finally, navigating the modern world.
You know, this isn't exactly a new conversation we're having. We're actually tracing a continuous thread of human inquiry across history. It goes from the deep philosophical ponderings of the ancient Rig Veda to the spiritual revelations of the Bhagavad Gita some 5,000 years ago, right up to 1924 when physicist Louis de Broglie completely shocked the scientific community. And that brings us to today, where we can use all of this combined knowledge to actually excel in our own lives.
All right, moving to Section 1. The quantum nature of reality, from the Big Bang to the Vedas.
It is literally mind-blowing when you put these two concepts side by side. On one hand, you have modern science's Big Bang theory, the general consensus that the universe expanded from an immeasurably hot singular point. Then, look at the ancient Nasadiya Sukta from the Rig Veda, which describes a time before existence where that one which came to be arose at last, born of the power of heat. I mean, thousands of years before telescopes were even a thought, ancient sages were describing the unmanifest becoming manifest through heat and rapid expansion.
Which perfectly sets up Section 2, Probability Waves and Formless Brahman. Science meets spirituality.
Think back to 1924. Louis de Broglie showed that matter exists as a wave of pure probability until it takes definite form. But here's the kicker. Thousands of years earlier, the Gita described the exact same architecture of reality. They called it Nirgun Brahman, which is reality as infinite, formless potential, basically the wave. And then there's Sagun Brahman, which is that potential taking definite form, the particle. It's the exact same concept, just a different vocabulary.
So here's where it gets really interesting for us. The observer effect. In quantum mechanics, just as measuring a quantum particle collapses its infinite possibilities into solid reality, our own consciousness and choices shape our daily experience. When unobserved, a quantum system is just a wave of pure probability, totally like Nirgun Brahman. But the second you observe it, boom, it collapses into a definite particle, like Sagun Brahman. The unmanifest becomes manifest, just because you looked.
And that brings us to a massive pivot point for your own life. If you are the observer collapsing the wave of your own universe, what kind of reality are you actually building? Are you collapsing that wave of infinite probability into a life of peace, clarity, and purpose? Or are you collapsing it into a life of stress and chaos?
Let's unpack how to control that in Section 3, Chapter 16, the inner war, defining your reality.
The 16th chapter of the Gita is basically the ultimate instruction manual on how to intentionally collapse our probability waves. It essentially splits our inner tendencies into two camps, divine, or Davi Sampad, and demoniac, or Asuri Sampad. When you choose fearlessness, purity, and compassion, your inner observer collapses your reality into peace and liberation. But if you observe your life through anger, greed, and ego, well, you collapse your reality into bondage and total chaos.
To really grasp this, take the ancient Puranic story of two brothers, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. They had noble roots. They had infinite potential, but they chose the path of ego, completely rejecting truth and spiritual wisdom. The takeaway here is absolutely crucial for us today. Demons are not literal monsters hiding under your bed. They are our own uncontrolled impulses that lead to our downfall. They're the things that blind us from seeing the underlying unity of everything around us.
So how do we fight this inner war? Let's jump into Section 4, Mastering the Mind's Chariot, Tools from the Upanishads.
I absolutely love this metaphor from the Katha Upanishad. It says, "The self is like a chariot. The intellect is the driver and the mind the reins." Just picture that for a second. If your mind is just loosely holding the reins without a sharp, discerning intellect guiding it, those horses, which represent your senses and desires, are going to run completely wild. They will pull your chariot right off a cliff.
But wait, who is actually behind the driver? The Kena Upanishad asks this brilliant question. Who makes the mind think? Who makes the eyes see? It points to an invisible force. Think of it like this.
You can't see the wind, right? You only see the leaves moving. Similarly, you can't see this fundamental consciousness, but it is the very thing experiencing your life. When you connect with that deeper source, your intellect becomes crystal clear, and you can actually steer your chariot with true purpose.
All right, let's bring all this soaring philosophy right down to earth. Section 5, Navigating the Modern World. Cultivating Peace.
Let's talk about abhayam, or fearlessness. True fearlessness isn't about recklessly trying to go fight a tiger with your bare hands. It's about using logic, or vigan drishti, to conquer irrational fears. You know, like being totally paralyzed by a tiny, harmless house lizard while still rightfully respecting actual, real-world dangers. Cultivating fearlessness in the modern world is having the courage to admit a mistake rather than throwing up a massive wall of ego. And then there's Dhamma, which is sense control. When life gets a little too spicy or chaotic, we absolutely need Dhamma. Imagine you take a huge bite of really spicy food. Some people might calmly reach for a glass of water, right? Others might throw a fit, start shouting, and create a whole chaotic scene. Dhamma is the ability to face distress, whether it's spicy food or a completely rude email from a coworker, and maintain your calm. You take measured action to fix the discomfort, rather than letting your senses drag your chariot into the mud.
Okay, so here is your practical, everyday action plan to purposefully collapse your infinite potential into a peaceful reality. Step 1. Pause. When something happens, recognize you are in a state of quantum superposition. You have multiple choices. Step 2. Practice Dhamma. Use your intellect to pull the reins and calm your senses down. Step 3. Cultivate abhayam. Approach the challenge with logic and purity of mind, not anxiety. And finally, Step 4. Collapse the wave positively. Choose those divine qualities we talked about and act without selfish expectation.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought as you step back into your day. You are the observer at the exact intersection of formless potential and manifest reality. Your life right now is a wave of infinite probability. So, how are you going to collapse it today?